So let's start with a bit of background about this tool. We already learnt that we use analytical and intuitive processes to make decisions. Intuitive processes are based mainly on prior experience, with similar patient presentations. For example, when someone says that they have chest pain, we automatically think, could this be AMI? Analytical reasoning processes are more systematic. We evaluate each piece of information and make more deliberate decisions. While it appears that we start with more analytical processes and move towards intuitive processes as we gain experience, even experts revert back to analytical processes when dealing with complex problems. It's therefore very important to develop an analytical approach to clinical reasoning. This tool helps you do that.
Wow, that sounds pretty useful. But I'm just starting out. It seems a bit beyond me.
Not at all. You're already doing it. This is just making it clearer. Here, let's just give it a go. First, you need to think about a case that you've seen recently. What features are important about that case? Write it down.
Here you go. I think that's everything.
That's great. You now need to think about decisions that you will need to make. This is where the next section of the DET will be useful. Think about decisions that need to be made in this patient presentation at the time that they're being seen. For example, the first one may be confirming the diagnosis. So go ahead and complete this as best you can. Don't worry about actual decisions. We'll worry about that later.
I'm not sure if I got this right. It took me a while to work out exactly what decisions I had to make. It's funny, I haven't ever really thought about it this carefully before. Makes me realize I might miss things.
Well, looks good to me. I can see that you've tried to identify a range of decision categories. What we do now is move to the next section, where you and I discuss and review the decision categories you've identified. So your first decision category would be around confirming the diagnosis. Once you have confirmed that this patient is hypertensive, you would want to assess their level of risk. Have you heard of the absolute cardiovascular risk calculator? You should use that to calculate the patient's level of risk. Your management plan would depend on the level of risk, so this would be your next decision category. Yes, it is important to consider whether high blood pressure is due to other factors. Worth thinking about, but LFT changes are minor, and high cholesterol is once again not very high. Do we need to worry about its causes at this point in time? Good. Good. Seems like you've already made a decision to refer as you are questioning who. Do we need to refer? Maybe a step before this is whether the patient has a mental health disorder or not. It would be good to consider non-pharmacological options, such as lifestyle modifications, etc. You also need to consider how you will plan follow-up and monitoring of this patient. Now is the time to make actual decisions for each category and provide a justification.
What do you mean, justification?
Well, sometimes you need to take your time to consider all relevant factors and make a reasoned decision. So you need to be prepared to discuss this reasoning process with me. If you're not sure, you could have a look at your textbooks, or better still, evidence-based guidelines and clinical decision tools to help you make the best possible decisions.
Sounds like I've got some homework. So here's what I managed to justify. It's pretty interesting actually. Made me feel more confident, at least for some of them.
Good. Now that you've completed this section, we can explore your clinical decision-making process. Yes, but you should consider reliability of blood pressure measurements. Single blood pressure isn't accurate. Consider home blood pressure checks and the possibility of white coat syndrome. Simplistic addition of a number of risk factors is not sufficient. It's important to do a calculator, such as the Australian Absolute Cardiovascular Risk Calculator. Yes. Depends on CV risk. Reasonable choices if we are prescribing. Quite reasonable but worth thinking about support sessions, such as quitline, EP referral, etc. It will take a while for the effects of therapy. 1 month is better. What could they offer in addition to what you can do? Not justified. Did you find that useful?
Gosh, yes. And now that we've gone through it, everything you've said makes sense. But to be honest, I wouldn't have really understood why if you'd just told me. And I'd have probably not treated the patient optimally otherwise. Thinking about my thinking. Cool.